You are responsible only for your healing. Once you begin the process of healing, that journey of inner work, it automatically happens that you would want to help another person also, especially the people you are close to. This comes automatically because we want others to see what we are seeing also. We want others to heal the problems that we are healing in. And this is a very natural tendency for people on a healing journey to do so. But remember that it's not your responsibility to heal another person. You might help them, you might guide them, you can show them the way that you are going through the healing process, but the entire step by step from the beginning, the whole journey is of each person himself or herself, because healing is a journey where it only happens individually. The wounds were inflicted on the individual himself. So when the wounds are individualistic, there cannot be another person who can come and heal it for the other person who is wounded. That is why the wounded has to be their own healer. And to become their own healer, they have to first see that there's a wound. If they do not see that there's a wound, they will never want to heal that wound. Physically, if there's a cut, if there's a cut from a knife, if you're cutting some vegetables or anything else, that wound is visible. There's a blood that comes out of it, and that's why a person wants to heal that wound. They take the precautions, they take the necessary medications for it, they apply an ointment for it, or if it's severe, they go to a doctor, and the doctor does a job for them. But the thing about a mental wound, the thing about traumas from childhood is such that it's not visible. It's not visible in the sense it's not visible to that person who is wounded. So when another person sees the projections and tries to make them realize that, see here, look here, there's a wound, they will not be able to see it. They might look at it superficially, but without going to the depths of their wound, they'll never be able to start working on them. Forget about healing from it or taking the inner journey. For them to just look that there's a wound and it requires medication through inner work, that first step itself is missing for most of the people, because they're so used to that wound of childhood trauma that they have ended up living with it for so long that it does not cause any harm to them anymore. And these have become their coping mechanisms. And these coping mechanisms come out in a lot of ways in interactions with other people and even with themselves. The way they think, the way they go about life, the way they ponder about things, it is all a coping mechanism, and it all comes through the ways of which the person was wounded, by whom he was wounded, how he was wounded, the depths of the wound. And to see all these things by a person, it requires a skill of being growth oriented. So a person is growth oriented when there's an openness to questioning themselves, questioning the people in their life, questioning even their own actions, and open to all the resources that are available by people of the past, by scientists, by philosophers, by spiritual people, or anything, any resource that can help them, any resource that can help them grow out of that particular wound. It may just be a temporary one person who, if you read a book about one person from one person, and it might just help a little bit to move ahead from that wound, but the wound is still there. I'm talking about healing the wound. If a person has to heal the wound by themselves, they have to look deep within themselves first. A book can help you see that this is a wound. A person can show you that this is your behavior and this is something that does not look normal. It does not look healthy. You say that to a person a million times, it doesn't matter to them, because that has been embedded in them as their behavior. And when it has been repeated for years, decades, it's not easy to change for a person in a matter of few days, weeks, or years for that matter. That is why it's important to be open minded about how you yourself are as a person. If you are someone who is wanting to heal from childhood traumas and you know that there are problems with your emotions, there are problems with how you handle emotions, there are problems with how you treat people, there are issues with how much you hurt people, even those you're close to. The people you're close to might actually be the ones who have traumatized you. That is a different story altogether. I'm talking about people who are genuinely there for you. If you're hurting them also, please know that it's coming out of the trauma. It's you get triggered if someone points out to you about your own patterns, about your own behavior, because somewhere deep down you know it exists, but you do not have the capacity yet to look at that particular wound, that particular pain that you have carried for so long, that you have forgotten that it is a dangerous thing to have, that you have forgotten that the wound that was given to you by a person in a childhood, be it mother, father, or anybody else, especially of the parents, that same wound you will inflict on other people. And that's generational trauma. Because what happens is, when you yourself are not aware of where the wound is coming from, where your actions are coming out of, if your actions are really, really traumatic to another person, if you're not even aware of your own emotions, you are bound to hurt the people and you won't even feel about the hurt that you inflict on other people. This is why it's so important that a person is in sync with their emotions, has a gauge on what feelings they feel. And trust me, when a person has gone through childhood traumas, they have dissociated themselves so much from that particular hurt that their feelings are gone. They do have feelings for other people, but these tend to be coming out of the trauma itself. They may have a very loving nature, and somewhere deep down they do. But when it's not just the good side of the person that shows the nature of a person, it's how they turn up to you at the worst times, in difficult times, in conflicts, in problems, in differences, in really challenging situations. That's how the other person is dealing with you in dire situations, in tough situations. And that's their definition of handling a problem when it comes to other people, especially with close ones. And this coping mechanism of how they deal so harshly with other people during bad times is an outcome of trauma. It's a very deep thing to understand that when a person is traumatized and they have dissociated themselves so much that they do not even feel that they are hurting other people through their coping mechanisms, because they themselves were hurt so much by their parents or the person who hurt them in their childhood. They have dissociated so much from that particular pain that they do not feel hurt anymore, because they had to survive in childhood somehow, because the whole survival was dependent on the parents. And to survive, the the mind has this mechanism that it just dissociates, it just takes out all the emotions out of the person, because then the person can become numb to all the pain that is inflicted upon them, to them. The pain, the hurt, whether it is a physical abuse or a verbal abuse, the person just dissociates. And this is the central core, it's a central theme of all the patients who go to therapy for childhood trauma, to heal the childhood trauma. And if you're doing the inner work by yourself, do understand that this is at the core. Dissociation from feelings and not knowing your emotions is at the core of being traumatized in childhood. That has continued in your adulthood. That's why when it comes to relationships, especially in relationships with a partner, all these things come up. There are conflicts with partner because if one person is totally emotional, not emotional as in overly emotional, if one person is in touch with the emotions and the other person is not, there has to be a conflict. And if one person is doing the inner work and the other person is not, there has to be a conflict, because there comes a thing about helping other people. This is the point of the whole video, that when you're in healing journey and you see that your partner has a pattern that does not serve them anymore, that the pattern is coming from childhood, and no matter how many times you tell them, it triggers them, and their coping mechanisms comes into the picture in a variety of ways, because the habit of keeping away from being hurt, the habit of staying away from feeling that pain of childhood, it's the brain, the mind has numbed it so much that it doesn't want to look at it again. So whenever another person points out, especially in a relationship, when another person, and this is the core of why couples fight, it's because one of the things that the partner does, the other does not like it. It could actually be about both the people not being in sync with their emotions, and this is the case with a lot of people. But I am referring to a specific narrowed down relationship where a person is on a healing journey already and the other person is not. So if you're on a healing journey and you have a lot of conflicts with your partner, you automatically want to help that person. But I want you to know that no matter how much you tell them, it is their responsibility to look at their own pain, their own suffering, their own patterns, their own traumas. You might point to them, you might guide them, and if that person is growth oriented, perfect. And you could be that anchor for that person. But if the person is not growth oriented, it is really not your responsibility to keep pushing them for it. And there are tons of books about dissociation. CPTSD book of Pete Walker. It's one of the main books that I have read about traumas, and that's the point where I started my inner work as well. He really points out about the flashbacks that a person gets during triggers, and the moment I read one of his articles on his website, it literally made me aware, because I was already on a spiritual journey. I was pretty aware of my mind, and I was just not aware that at that time that the flashbacks that I used to see somehow connected to the pictures, the images that come up during triggers, that they were somehow connected to my childhood. And for 33 years I didn't know that my parents were narcissists and that they had narcissistic tendencies, all the traits of it, both of them. So that's a very deadly combination. So when a person has lived for 33 years without knowing that there was a childhood trauma in him that was so deep, and that literally goes very, very deep into a person's psyche itself. That's why if you're aware, it becomes easy for you to figure out the roots of where your traumas are coming from. And whenever you read any of these articles, these books, or listen to videos, you can easily go back to that particular place in your memory and remember and connect the flashbacks that you get in the form of images with the root of the traumas that you're facing. And there are n number of traumas, traumatic responses, the reactions, and all the coping mechanisms, all the patterns that we have picked up from our parents. There are n number of them. So being aware is of utmost importance, and when there is an awareness of the flashback and you have this mind of connecting with the past memory that you get in the form of a flashback. And this really happens in at the time of trigger itself. It's really quick, so you have to be really sharp. The mind has to be really sharp, and for the mind to be sharp you need to be very fresh, and you need to be open to look and not judge yourself, not interpret what the mind is showing you, not attach any meanings to it. You just have to look, just barely look at what images that you're seeing in your mind. And it literally, the mind is literally a, a lighthouse that it is pointing you to your traumatic incident in your childhood. It always does it because the mind itself wants to heal. So the mind is literally helping you heal yourself if only you know how to notice it. If only you have the art, you have the skill, you have the quality of observing the mind. And for that, slowness needs to be there in a person. So if you are somebody who do not have slowness in yourself, just make a habit about walking or walking slowly, and just doing everything that you are already doing in your life, but in at least half the time that you're doing till now. And watch things that move slowly. In nature there are a lot of things that move slowly, and everything in nature is in sync with reality except humans. So if you are watching clouds, they do not just rush, they have a certain movement to it. They move with grace. That's why everything in nature, if you look at birds, if you look at animals, they move with grace. It's only humans who have developed this knack of being quick, of being fast, because the whole system of society has been developed that way, that you have to be quick, you have to do things quickly. But that quickness does not help a person to see these kind of flashbacks, where the mind itself is telling you, look here, here is your problem, just look at it, and your healing journey will begin. Or and these flashbacks will keep coming up. It's the healing never ends. It's an ongoing process always. And the reason you have to get slowness into you have to see things with slowness on the outside is how you are on the outside is how you are on the inside. And this is difficult to get for a lot of people, but how you do things on the outside shows the quality of your inner world. Both are related, and it's the person's work to heal themselves. No matter how much you tell them about the patterns, you'll only end up ruining the particular relationship that you have with them, be it your parents, your siblings, your partner, or at work. At work, it's at least professionalism, where you cannot get so mad at the person, and there's a certain level of ethics that goes on in at work in companies. But when it comes to personal life with the people you love, there ends to be a lack of boundaries. That's why person who has not even started the healing journey gets that dominancy, where they can treat their people they love anyhow they want, because they have not yet seen that all of it is coming out of trauma. And the when the mind is so compulsive and you do not have the slowness, the flashback just skips right through, and you'll not be able to notice it. And then comes the all the coping mechanisms of anger and all the other abuses that goes on with the trauma, because it's a coping mechanism. You're trying to cope with that particular emotion that you have suppressed, and you cope with it by projecting onto the other person. So if you're telling your partner that, see, this is a problem that I see, but they're not able to see it. So when you tell them that this is the problem that you see, and you're very genuine about it, that this is a pattern that you see in them, which is not healthy. So instead of them working and looking at their own life, what they would do is they would project onto you. They would project onto the person who is telling them to look at themselves, because then whatever you tell them, it is processed as an attack. It is not processed as something that you're telling them for their own good. The whole processing, right, it works very differently in the mind of a person who is traumatized. And I have myself gone through that process, where I was told that I have had, I was told by another person that I have traumas and I have to heal it. At that time, uh, I did not really consider it at all, because how the mind actually processes something when it has itself not seen it is it deflects. It's a classic deflection of not working on themselves, and the blame goes to the other person on the opposite end who is actually trying to help you. And when there's a genuine person on the other side and they're trying to help you, they will not be able to help you if you yourself have not seen that this is a very dangerous thing to have. This pattern is dangerous, and you want to work on it. Till then, you will always keep projecting onto the person. You always keep blaming the other person in response to what they have told you, until that person sees themselves that it is a very, very deep danger to have this particular pattern in them, and all of it is coming from childhood. Till they see it, there's nothing you can do about it. And this is one of the main reasons that couples break up, because there is a misalignment in, especially when it comes to one one partner being on a healing journey and the other being not on a healing journey. There tends to be a conflict between the two, and if one of the partner is not holding that particular position as an anchor, the other person will always keep projecting onto them. And if this person is not strong enough, if he is not anchoring enough, if he is not grounded enough, the relationship will not work out. That's why it's really important to hold a relationship together. At least one person needs to be grounded in reality, and to be grounded, the only way to do it is through inner work. Beliefs might help to a certain extent, but they have its own limitations. And beliefs are another thing where, another reason why the other person cannot see through their own particular coping mechanisms. Because what the mind has done is, through beliefs, the coping mechanisms are developed. So now they rely on that particular belief that this has worked out till now, and I'm going to continue this. So it does not, the belief itself does not let them free. The belief can never let a person be free of its own limitation, because it has been embedded in that person to just function that particular way, and this brings in stagnancy. So when a person has functioned in a particular way for a long time, for years and decades, that's a deep pattern that's not easy to break out of. And no matter what the other person says, it's not easy for the traumatized person to see this, that this is indeed a dangerous pattern to have. The belief does not allow that person to see through the coping mechanisms. The beliefs might have helped them and might continue helping them, but it's a very superficial thing to be relying on beliefs, because belief is something that is literally not existing. It's non existent. You believe in something because it's not a fact. You don't believe that you have two hands, you know you have two hands. When you're certain about something, you don't believe in it. And when people talk about the belief, it's a very analogous thing to say. It's non-existent, it's just in their mind, or it's just some analogy that they've picked up from somewhere. And the belief of God is something that's very deep. When a person relies on the belief of God, be it of any kind, and that has become their coping mechanism, that's the deepest thing to come out of. Because now they have a meaning, of the deepest kind of meaning that they have given to rely on, and that has helped them. It's great that it has helped them to remain alive, to cope through all those difficult times. But there comes a point where you have to be free of that particular belief, and only then the inner work can begin. So, if you are somebody who has been trying to help another person, who has given you all to help them, please know that it's not your responsibility to heal another person. It can never be your responsibility, because it's their responsibility to see that there's a pattern that exists. And the more they live in this particular illusion, the more that they will want to get out of it. and it's only then that their inner journey of healing begins.